What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Foxboro Rush. I am Keagan Stiefel. That is Sean McGuire. And Sean, we're not the hosts of this program.
We are today, Keagan.
That's right. Yeah, George is out sick, I guess you could say. He's not really sick, but he lost a voice. We've got him doing just about every show we got here at Nesson, so he gets the day off. Sean and I will fill in and talk all things Patriots. We got a packed show, a Friday show, so that means Michael Lombardi is going to be on. It's Halloween when we're recording this, so we got a little Halloween segment, and then a Patriots-Titans preview. But, Sean, we're going to start with the Michael Lombardi interview. A lot of great stuff. We talk trade deadline, talk Josh Uche, who comes, who goes, tons of stuff. So we'll get straight into it. Michael Lombardi with George earlier today.
He's Michael Lombardi, host of the GM Shuffle. You also catch him on Coach with Bill Belichick as well. Michael, thanks as always for hopping up Foxboro Rush. How are we doing today, my friend?
We're doing great, thank you. It's unbelievably that it's week 9. Happy Halloween to you, and hopefully you have a great night.
I know, and I know it's especially an exciting time for you. Go back to your front office days as the NFL trade deadline approaches. But before we get to that, I want to look back to last Sunday. The Patriots, with that win over the Jets, lose Drake May just 3 drives into the game, come back late in the game, and that Ramondre Stevenson game-winning touchdown. What did you make of that victory by New England against the Jets, especially everything they went through in the game?
Well, I think it showed some really good mental toughness. I think they still showed some areas of concern as a football team, but look, it was a game they thought they could win. They played like it, even though the last game they played the Jets dominated them, and they made the plays that they needed to make. I think, to me, they were you could see their energy, even though they lost Drake May early in the game. Their energy level didn't dissipate with Jacoby Brissett. I think they went in there and they battled. Look, all these games usually will come down to the fourth quarter. Even the bad teams, they'll play good for 50 minutes and lose the last 10 minutes of the game. So credit the Patriots for battling through, making some critical plays that they needed to make. And, of course, the Jets just couldn't help themselves and give plays away. Let's face it, Zerline's missed extra point, his missed field goals all played a part in this whole thing.
Yeah, including them even struggling to execute late when they needed that 2-point conversion. And what did it say to you about the response we saw from the Patriots coming off a game, as you alluded to, in a Jaguars game? Their coach called them soft, and the narrative carried out throughout the week, and the way they responded, and the way Gerard Mayo responded as well.
Well, look, one thing we got to be careful with is when you beat a bad team, that doesn't make you good. It was 2 bad teams playing. This week they're playing another bad team in the Tennessee Titans, which will be a little bit of a different test for them because Tennessee's very good on defense. I know that people think, well, they gave up 52 points to Detroit last week, but if you really look at that game, it was the special teams. Jared Goff threw for less than 100 yards in the game. Their field position was unbelievable. Now, one thing about the Titans, they turned the ball over. They've had 16 offensive turnovers so far this season. So I think, to me, look, you beat a bad team, that's great. But at some point, you really can only stick your chest out when you beat a good team fair and square, up and down. And I think, to me, the Patriots have yet to do that.
Yeah, consistency would be nice to see them put together on Sunday to go out, play a complete game, so much like they did against the Jets. All right, now looking at the moves we've seen so far in this trade deadline, the move that New England made was trade away Josh Uche to the Chiefs for a future 6th-round pick. What did you make of Josh Uche playing a very important position on the field? Yes, he wasn't having a great year for New England, but the Patriots only getting a future 6th in return when I feel like a position like the one he plays for a team that's going in to win now like the Chiefs could have given more, and maybe Elliott Wolf and the Patriots could have demanded more to trade him away.
Well, they had a 5th-round pick, and when they went back to the Chiefs to get that 5th back, the Chiefs had already given that away for the DeAndre Hopkins, so they lost that. Look, the market says a 6th and 26, which is really like a 7th. So obviously, Josh wasn't gaining any interest from any team. I thought Detroit might be a player for this, but they pulled the pin on it rather early. I don't know why. To me, I would have waited until probably the last day, the 6th-round pick. You don't think you can get that from somebody somewhere? Obviously not. And you take in Kansas City's 6th-round pick in 26. George, what do you think that pick's going to be? Like the 31st, the 32nd? You basically traded him for a seventh. You traded him away for nothing. I mean, I thought it was ridiculous. Look, they're doing the same thing with Taquan Thornton. I think by the end of the trading deadline, Thornton won't be on their team. And if he is on their team, they've tried to trade him away. They're trying to get rid of some guys that they feel they don't have a future in. And obviously, I thought Uche certainly did because he could rush around the edge, but he wasn't playing to that level. Watch him play really good for Kansas City, though.
Right, George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, Steve Spagnuolo, he's going to shine. But I love what you point out, too, of basically that future pick, knock it down around later, especially to a good team like the Chiefs. The Taquan Thornton, I'm in between. He hasn't been much for them. If they could get anything back for him, would be important. But as you point out what they did in that trade, how do you assess the job Elliott Wolf has done so far for this Patriots front office, which things in the NFL trade deadline, I know you know, can change minute by minute?
Yeah, but I think the hardest job Elliott has right now is trying to refigure this offensive line. I mean, he can't be happy with it. It's not very good. And I think to me that if you look back on the offseason and if you said, what did we fail to get done is improving this offensive line, because really everything breaks down because of the offensive line. Everything breaks down because they can't really pass protect the tackles. And we're going to see it this week against a very good Tennessee front. They're going to have a hard time blocking Jeffrey Simmons. They're going to have a hard time blocking Arden Key and Landry and those guys. This will be a challenge because everybody in New England are really happy that they won that game, and they're going to play a team that has one win only. But they're a little bit better than that one win. I mean, they've had opportunities to win a lot of games this year. They just give it away, but whether they're quarterback from Will Levis' standpoint. So, and, you know, look, they're a 3.5-point dog going in the game. Think about that, George, for a second. I mean, you're celebrating this win against the Jets, and you're going on the road for a 3.5-point, you know, a team that has one win. That tells you a lot about what the odds makers feel is the value of the Patriots.
I feel like you kind of answered it there, but if you were leading this Patriots front office right now, what's a move you would make at this trade deadline, whether trading a guy away or trading for a position?
I would not give away draft picks because I think, to me, my draft picks are going to be really high. I'm going to be picking in the top 10. I would guard those picks with my life. But if I could find a way to find some young offensive lineman somewhere and try to develop it, my emphasis would be every single offensive lineman on the practice squad. I would try to find any way I could improve the line as best I could, seeing if we could develop some young offensive linemen and try to find more defensive linemen if we possibly can. I would not give away any of that. To me, everybody wants you to trade for a receiver. Look, they can't get the ball to receivers they have, let alone try to get the ball to some receiver they don't have. So for me, it would be going back to the plan. We've got to fix these offensive and defensive lines, which would have been my plan in the offseason. I think when you watched the Patriots last year, they were tackle poor, you know, and I think to me they're still tackle poor after a year.
Yeah, I love that you point that out because I think that's the biggest thing to address. And then you see that Cam Robinson deal go through that took him to the Vikings, where basically Minnesota gives up a conditional 2026 fifth-round pick. So why don't the Patriots make a move like that then? Of these later-round picks that we've seen GMs be fine with accepting to give away someone like a Cam Robinson, who is a good left tackle and a better left tackle than what the Patriots have right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's much better. I mean, he has not played to that level. You know, he's a franchise guy, and if you watch the tape closely, he hasn't played as well. Now, look, Minnesota's taking him and saying to themselves, we think we can make him a better player than he played for Jacksonville. Jacksonville's going to play Walker Little at left tackle, a guy they drafted in the second round, and Walker Little is a guy that Trent Baalke, their general manager, thought could be similar to Joe Staley. That hasn't manifested itself in his play. So, look, I think to me that salary that was attached to the player's name is one of the reasons why Minnesota was the only team willing to take him on. And that's a big issue. You don't want to take on unwanted salaries at this point. You want to eat cap room because every dollar you don't spend this year, you can put it in next year's cap and buy players that you could use.
Yeah, Patriots right now about $25 million in cap space they can roll over to next season. Now, the best trade assets they have are guys like Jonathan Jones. He's a good defensive back. He's a good leader. He's a vet, and we know teams are out there that need him. But as Gerard Mayo insinuated on Wednesday, he says, you know, those culture guys, you don't necessarily want to trade them away, especially a leader like Jay Jones, which the Patriots need with all the injuries they have. When you are a front office exec at this point, how hard is it to walk that line of we need draft picks, we need to get better, and someone in high demand like Jonathan Jones, you can't necessarily give up because of how important he is in that locker room?
Well, it really comes down to one thing. The Patriots have cap room. So the fundamental question they have to ask themselves, are we going to sign Jonathan Jones? Are we going to keep him on this team? And if Mayo thinks he's part of the franchise and he's got all these leadership skills, then the decision has to be, do we sign him? If we know we're not going to sign him, then we know he's going to have huge value in the open market next year, which will be a compensatory value coming back. What do we do with that? Do we take a pick now and forget that we're going to sign so many guys in free agency that the compensatory pick will wash out? I think all those things have to be modeled out and then make the decision. It's not about we like the guy. Yeah, everybody likes him. Is he going to be on the team next year? That's the focus for Elliott Wolf. Who's going to be on the team next year? And would we sign him to a contract? Can we extend his contract now? We've got this cap room that we could put some money into this year and see if we can get something done. If they're not going to sign him now and someone's willing to trade you a good pick, then you got to make that trade no matter how much a part of the culture he fits.
We saw that the Ravens went out and dealt for Deontay Johnson. A lot of people are clamoring, go get T. Higgins. I'm one of those people included. Get him in your building, sign him now. You get him in before he hits the open market. Is that realistic, you think, for this Patriots team to go out and find a wide receiver through the trade market? Or again, those draft assets, those draft picks are so important?
Well, I mean, look, they're going to be competitive with him in the open market. I mean, Mike Brown's not going to trade him. Mike Brown needs him on his team. I would be surprised if Mike Brown was willing to trade him unless somebody was willing to give him a very high pick that he's not going to get compensatory. And when you trade him, I mean, when you trade T. Higgins, which the message you send to your locker room is you've given up on the year. Do you really want to do that? I don't think so. So to me, I think the key is really about what you want to do and how this is all going to come to fruition. I think you just got to see what you do. I don't think you want to trade away anything just to improve the team a little bit this year. What you want to do is improve the team a lot in the summer, next year.
And so we saw the Ravens got Deontay Johnson. The Chiefs got DeAndre Hopkins and Joshua Uche. The Bills got Amari Cooper. Who moved the needle the most, in your opinion, out of these teams that have made trades so far to help themselves out, especially those three teams that are all contenders in the AFC?
Well, I think the Kansas City's really strengthened their strength, right? Their front was their defensive line. They added another rusher to go with George Karlaftis on the other side with Chris Jones inside. I think that certainly helps them. And then they added a red zone receiver in Hopkins, a guy who can go up and catch the football, and he can convert third downs. Look, they're not going to be a team that is going to score 40, 50 points a game. They're a team that is going to be able to convert third downs, keep the ball, keep their defense off the field, and Hopkins does a nice job with that.
So Michael Lombardi, you can catch him on the GM Shuffle, on Coach as well, Bill Belichick. Michael, appreciate you taking the time as always. Enjoy your Halloween.
Thank you. Same to you, George.
Thanks again to Michael and George for fighting his battle and getting through it. But I wanted to start with a little bit on what Lombardi had to say, just in terms of the trade deadline and where he would go if he were, in the big seat in New England. Sean, I know that the wide receiver thing really stuck out to you, and then we'll kind of bounce back and forth between that.
Yeah, I thought he offered a decent, a good amount of stuff in terms of how the Patriots should operate. I think one quote that kind of stuck out as funny to me was essentially saying how, Patriots fans, and they're talking about trading for a wide receiver while the Patriots can't get the ball to the receivers that they currently have. Meanwhile, T. Higgins is being thrown around, who I would agree with, would be completely on board with them trying to make a deal for T. Higgins before the deadline. Mike Lombardi also, good quote on that too about the Bengals and probably their unwillingness, I think is, fair to say, Cincinnati's unwillingness to trade T. Higgins. And that just be, like he said, it kind of sends a message to the locker room that, we're giving up on the season. We're punting on the season. And while Cincy certainly isn't in a great position, they just lost to Philly last week too. So they're kind of, they're sputtering a little bit, but I do think it's, Joe Burrow has been very straightforward, and anytime he's playing, they're in contention. Not only playoff contention but Super Bowl contention. So I do agree with that too. Like the Patriots fans who want T. Higgins to come over here probably should pump the brakes a little bit. I also thought what he said just about operating deadline in terms of I think he said he would guard the picks with his life is essentially what he said. Rather than the Elliott Wolf or the Patriots trading away picks for any players ahead of the deadline. So I thought that was good insight as well. He talked a little bit about developing offensive linemen, and we've seen the Patriots try to do that a ton. Ben Brown a few weeks ago, he's come in, he's actually played pretty well. So, they've gotten some guys off the practice squads of other teams, and the offensive line has looked better. So
Right.
I think that's fair to say. But yeah, a lot of great stuff from Lombardi. I would say those receiver comments, the offensive line comment, the guarding the picks with his life. I think those stood out to me.
Yeah, I think the guarding the picks thing is really interesting because we've seen two different ways of going about it entering the trade deadline, specifically in the last couple of years. Chicago, if there was ever a team that needed to guard picks, it was Chicago last year because they knew that they had a chance of getting the number one pick. Obviously, that was Carolina's pick originally that they got in the trade, but they had a ton of capital, and they end up shipping out a second-round pick for Montez Sweat, who's their best defender this year. And, they bring him in a contract year, they extend him, and kind of set themselves up where they don't have to play the market. They don't have to bid with other teams. They can just bring a guy in and extend him and not worry about it for a second-round pick. Are the Patriots as close as Chicago maybe felt they were last year? No. Are the Patriots, are they one addition away from having a competent offense or defense? No. So I think that's where the Patriots are at, and that's the difference between Chicago and New England, where Montez Sweat could come in and it could revamp the entire defense because that was a major hole that they had. The Patriots have too many to fill, really, on both sides of the ball. So whether it's a receiver or, they need probably cornerback depth, and they definitely need offensive line help. You're just not going to you're not going to fix all of that with one move. So I completely understand guarding the picks with your life, especially with, you win last week. You might not have the number one pick. You might have the 2 or the 3. So you don't want to mess around. You just want to play for your pick and make sure you have that moving forward. So I agree with that 100%. One thing that I might want to push back on a little bit was his thoughts on Josh Uche, which it might be a case of he hasn't watched Josh Uche play as much as we have in the last couple of years. Not the same guy he was in 2022 playing alongside Matthew Judon. I think we've seen that, and we've heard it from Gerard Mayo with what he said after the trade. It was best for both sides, and he appreciated Uche. Obviously, that was one of the first guys that they drafted after Mayo got hired onto the staff in 2019, so they worked a lot together, but you could just see that it wasn't working for either side. He was a rotational player, and in a defense where you can't play with rotations, you've got injuries, and you got to go out there and play first, second, and third down. Uche's not that guy. So thinking that he's some big addition, maybe for Kansas City because they can use him in a rotational role, but definitely not New England. And I understand completely getting off that contract and getting whatever you can for him before he leaves this offseason.
Yeah, and it's kind of I think I talked about this a little bit with George the other day too. Uche didn't fit the Patriots this year because the Patriots were getting ran over and they were behind, by 2 and 3 scores in a lot of these games. So, Uche being the pass rusher that he is, first and foremost, a lot of times he was getting targeted on the ground, and he wasn't playing for a team that suits his skill set essentially. And I do think he goes to a much better spot in Kansas City, obviously, who, they'll get leads and he'll be able to, kind of wreak some havoc. And I'm sure at some point in the playoffs, we'll get a big Josh Uche sack or a forced fumble or something like that, and Patriots fans will be like, "Oh my God, why did Elliott Wolf trade him away?" But I think he's going to such a better situation that it's almost not really fair to compare the two situations, really.
Right. Yeah, and with that defense, Steve Spagnuolo, like if there's ever a guy to put Josh Uche onto their defense and have him find success, I think it's Kansas City. I think it's Steve Spagnuolo. So, like you said, he'll win them the AFC Championship probably and egg on our face, right? But at the end of the day, you got to get rid of that guy. I just went back to look up. He's got 2 sacks in his last 17 games. Yeah. That ain't going to get it done, and that's not good enough for a team where you have to play all 3 downs. So first and second, you're defending the run, and then you got to go rush the passer. Whatever is happening there wasn't working. So with Uche, agree to disagree. But another one, we'll come back. We'll give Lombardi his flowers with the culture guys comment. And I think that's something that me and you have talked about. It's been a thought the last couple of weeks, just with the guys they have left to trade, a lot of them have a big role in the locker room, whether it be Jonathan Jones or Kendrick Bourne. And we've floated the idea that you don't want to trade those guys because they're leaders in the wide receiver room, in the cornerback room, both young rooms, a lot of young players who have had their struggles on and off the field in the last couple of years. So I agree with him in terms of if you have a culture guy, right, that's huge, right? You want to keep that guy. But in the back of your mind, you have to think, is he going to be on this team next year? Is Jonathan Jones going to be here next year? Because he's he's in a walk year. So if you don't plan on bringing him back, it doesn't matter if he's good for the culture, because in 6 months, he'll be gone anyway.
I was going to say, the culture's 6 weeks long at this point. No, and I completely agree with it. And I would say the same thing. Like, I think that they probably should move on from Jonathan Jones, because I don't think he's 31. He was a key part of New England's past, seasons and when they were competitive, but they're not going to be competitive for a few more years. So I guess in that, with that said, why would a 31-year-old, want to stick around for that? And maybe he does. And if Jonathan Jones for kind of being all in on the Patriot way sort of thing. But I think at this point, if you can get some sort of 4th-round pick or something for Jonathan Jones, I think it's kind of a no-brainer, because it is, it's that sort of, you don't know if it's going to be a long-term partnership. And I also do agree with what Lombardi said about, if Elliott Wolf and the company and they're all in on re-signing Jonathan Jones, and who knows exactly what that contract will be. I'm sure it won't be as expensive as the last one, just given his age. But if they're all in on keeping him, for another 2-year, 3-year deal, whatever that case may be, I think then it does make a lot of sense, to keep him around at this point. And a lot of we've talked about, Kendrick Bourne, another one of those culture guys, Devon Godshaw, another one of those culture guys, a
loud culture
and
guy.
I thought yes, outspoken culture guy,
That's
but
right.
Culture guy nonetheless. And I thought Gerard's quote yesterday was, really insightful, kind of. He talked about how important it was, and how that would, the Patriots would take that into consideration. So I think it makes a lot of sense to, part ways with a guy like Jonathan Jones, maybe even Kendrick Bourne, because of the returns that you'll get. Yeah. But, if those guys are next, 3, 4, whatever years, then I completely understand why you don't want to trade him for, a 6th-round pick or something, just to spend that.
Right, and Bourne is under contract. There is a little bit of a difference in that situation. They just signed him to a new contract, so he, in theory, should be around for a while. Jonathan Jones certainly feels like a guy who would be willing to stay. He's found success here. He's won a couple Super Bowls. I think for him, there would be a little bit of pride in being able to bring the standard back to where it was from when he came in. You want to leave a place better than when you found it, right? So definitely something interesting to think about heading into the trade deadline. But one last thing on Lombardi that I kind of wanted to ask you. George asked him, if you were the general manager for the Patriots right now, what's one move you could make? I want to ask you, Sean, you're taking over for Elliott this week. What's one move you would make?
I'm getting rid of KJ Osborne as fast as I can, and I don't care what is coming back to me. Yeah. I think we've seen some of these trades for receivers and kind of modest picks, right? I mean, Deontay Johnson, what Baltimore gave up to get him was really a modest modest return.
They could move up in the draft if he ends up leaving for a contract worth more than $5 million. They get a 3rd-round pick, so they're playing chess.
Exactly, yeah, and it's just so I can't think I don't think that KJ Osborne is going to get you anything more than that, anything more than what Deontay Johnson went for. But I don't care. It's that point that he's brought such a. I mean, what he did last week or after the Jaguars game, so I guess that's closer to 2 weeks ago now. But after the Jaguars game, when he broadcast that screenshot and essentially hinted at his unhappiness and then kind of doubles down midweek when he's talking to reporters. He's created such a distraction, I think, and he's just a player of his caliber I don't think is worth that. You brought him in because you thought he was going to be a veteran voice and, lead the young guys, and he's more or less created the dysfunction. So I think if I was to take one move, I think it's going to be get rid of KJ Osborne.
Yeah, you read my mind. It was the same exact thing, because I think Tyquan Thornton's the guy that gets beat up on a lot around here. Just it hasn't worked out. 2nd-round pick, he's done close to nothing since he's gotten here. But at the end of the day, you kind of need depth. So if you can't get rid of both of them, I don't think, because then you're one injury away from shit hitting the fan. Excuse my language. So I definitely agree with the Osborne part of it because you can maybe get something for him. No one's going to trade for Tyquan Thornton. They're waiting for you to cut him so they can sign him for nothing, maybe to the practice squad and elevate him. KJ Osborne, he's proven something in this league at least. So, like you said, a conditional 7th to where if he does play for a playoff team, you get something out of it. But to get him out of the building, not only for the stuff he's kind of brought to the table in the last couple of weeks off the field, but it opens up a spot for a guy like Javon Baker, who, I've talked a lot about, on NESN.com, plug, what we like to do, our day jobs, let's say. But I've said it a lot on NESN.com where Javon Baker's just not ready to play. And we saw it throughout training camp. We've seen it in limited action. No targets during the regular season, but during the preseason, he's not physical enough. He's not savvy enough with his route running. He doesn't have the speed to just straight up beat people. Like, he still needs to learn how to play wide receiver a little bit before he can actually hit the field. But at the end of the day, it's nut cutting time. Let's get this guy on the field. Let's see what he can do before we go into an offseason where he might not really have a spot. We like to think Javon Baker, he's fun and he is explosive, like Gerard Mayo said last week. And they did select him, but they selected him in the 6th round. That doesn't guarantee anybody a spot, especially if they do bring in a number 1 wide receiver and you do get a little bit of something out of Jalen Polk. Demario Douglas is here. Kendrick Bourne is here. There's not a ton of spots for guys left if they do bring in that true number 1 wide receiver. So give him an opportunity to at least show that he can stick around. Keishawn Boutte, we've seen he struggled early, and he's starting to come on here a little bit later. Lately, he's getting better by the week. So give somebody else an opportunity to do that. Get rid of KJ Osborne. Keep Tyquan Thornton just in case somebody gets hurt. And I wouldn't mind seeing that wide receiver room moving forward.
Yep.
We're going to move on, though, because we've got something special for you guys. It's a little segment to celebrate the holiday season. It's Halloween, not for you guys because it's November 1st when you're listening, but it's Halloween for us. So we're gonna celebrate by talking about some Patriots ghosts, not ghosts of the past. We're sick of talking about the past, but ghosts of 2024, because there are some guys on this roster that have disappeared. Sean, we thought they were gonna play pretty important roles coming into the season, and they've done nothing. So I'd like to hear who your biggest ghost is for the 2024 New England Patriots.
Well, I think the biggest ghost has to be Chuck Okorafor because he's a legitimate ghost at this point. He lasted 12 snaps for the team. And then he disappeared. Literally 12 snaps, and then he disappeared, and he's never been heard from again. So I think, objectively, Okorafor is the biggest ghost on the team. But given the small sample size that he's offered us, I'll turn this into something else as well. I'm just going to double down on our receiver talk because I just think a lot of those guys really have not lived up to what we expected. I'm not going to go and put more dirt on KJ Osborne after that last segment, but KJ Osborne is a prime example. And so among the receiver room in their total receiver room, they have 64 receptions, 667 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's including Kendrick Bourne, who, obviously didn't play the first 4 weeks of the season, kind of getting back from his ACL injury. So I don't want to take too much of a shot at him, but, 4 receptions for 29 yards in the amount of time that he's played, you would have thought that he's offered more. Onto Keishawn Boutte, 11 receptions, 185. He has come on certainly more than others. But I just what have we really seen from him? Then you go to Jalen Polk, who had really high expectations entering the season.
Absolutely.
Maybe is even their top receiver. Obviously a rookie, so he was going to have an uphill battle, and he was going to have to learn on the go. But you definitely would not have, at least I would not have expected him to have 10 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown through 8 weeks of the season.
On 40 targets. He's been targeted more than anybody else in the room.
Yep. And, I guess he's played 7 games when everyone else played 8, but the point still stands. And then KJ Osborne, 7 receptions, 57 yards. Tyquan Thornton, 4 receptions, 47 yards. Javon Baker, like we just said, he can't get on the field. So if you're to talk about one group of ghosts, I think it just has to be the receiver room, especially given, the amount of talk that they're offering us, and then to just go out the next week and drop, I don't know, at least four. We'll call it that. At least four balls against the Jets is just, it's been a really tough stretch for the receiver room.
Can you read off those collective numbers for me again? Because it's unbelievable.
Yes. So I'll go player by player.
No. I want the collective, all of them. What are those numbers? Yes.
64 receptions, 667 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
That's like a decent month for A.J. Brown. That's all that is. That's just like he had a good month. Those numbers are horrific. I want to talk about a group as well, because the linebacking core, after Juwan Bentley went down with his pectoral injury, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Get it together, guys. Like, it has been ridiculous. And I'm not going to throw in Jelani Tavai because I truly believe he's playing out of position now. He's not an off-ball linebacker. He hasn't been that since his second year in New England. They moved him on the ball. Now he's moving back to a spot where he's never been comfortable. He's never been good. So give him credit for at least knowing he can stand in the middle of the defense and help people out communication-wise. He's just not there. I don't want to pile on him. Christian Ellis has jumped in, and he's actually been pretty good, so I'm not going to pile on him. But Sion Takitaki, Raekwon McMillan, what are we doing? Like, where are these guys? What happened to in the offseason, you signed Takitaki. You thought he was going to come in and be your athletic linebacker next to Juwan Bentley. He was going to be your coverage guy. He's done nothing, and I know he got hurt during training camp. He missed the first 4 weeks of the season, but they added him to the lineup almost immediately because they needed him, and then immediately cut his reps in half, and he's been on the injured list ever since, and he's really done nothing. That has been a disaster of a signing, whether it's an injury thing or not. He has been a net negative for this team through 4 weeks or through 4 games. And then Raekwon McMillan, this is a guy who I almost feel bad for at this point with the amount of injuries he's gone through in New England, but they kept signing him to, extensions, trying to bring him back so he could rehab. There's obviously something there that they like, but on the field, he is nothing. And I watched him a lot early in his career at Ohio State, in Miami, and Las Vegas. He was like an athletic, decent middle linebacker. He's been half of the player he was since he started actually playing football in New England. So those two guys, woof. And that group as a whole, it's been bad. And then another one, a quick one, Jeremiah Farms. We saw in the preseason, we're like, this guy's awesome. He can get after the quarterback. We threw that tag on him a lot, but he's done nothing. And for a guy who's taken up a roster spot, he can't play on early downs. Jacqueline Roy, who was signed like 3 weeks ago off the street, he's their starting interior defensive lineman because Devon Godshaw's playing on the edge. I would like to see that guy get on the field. Maybe he can't. Maybe physically he's just not there. But you're wasting a roster spot at that point because he's doing a whole lot of nothing. So another ghost. Tons of ghosts, but we only had time for a few.
A lot of ghosts. Because
we got to talk Patriots Titans. Sunday, maybe the worst football game of the season if we're looking on paper in terms of two teams. 1-6 versus 2-6. Horrific football being played on both sides. So we're going to get into it a little bit. I want to hear your main thoughts just kind of going into the game. Who do you have your eye on? Who do you think might struggle in a game where they're going down into Nashville? What do you got, Sean?
Yeah, I think for the Patriots, as a lot of these games have been, it's a lot is going to be put on their run game because it's just, and that's not a great thing. That's not a good thing when you're going into Tennessee because Tennessee they're in the position they're at, similar to New England, but their defensive front is legit. Jeffrey Simmons obviously leads that pack, and just kind of doing a few things on looking at the box scores and stuff, and so they've allowed the 6th fewest yards to running backs, 4 yards a carry. They've only allowed 5 rushing touchdowns to running backs this season, 3rd fewest passing yards to running backs as well. So Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson kind of getting involved in the passing game, which we've seen a decent amount of, probably as much as you would have expected after Alex Van Pelt wanted them to be the I think that was the best screen team in the league this preseason. So definitely haven't seen that. But it's not a great matchup. And the Patriots, I think a lot was made against the Jets in terms of yeah, they ran the ball when they needed to and all that sort of thing. And they did, to their credit, they did. They got the 1 yard that they needed to
Right.
win the game at the end. But it really wasn't a stellar performance from the rushing tandem of Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. 25 rushes for 55 yards among running backs. So the running backs averaged 2.2 yards a carry.
Yeah,
obviously, those numbers looked a lot better in the box score because they took into Drake May scrambles and
right.
a lot of Drake May scrambles and even the Jacoby Brissett scramble at the end of the game too. So, but outside of what the quarterbacks offered them, the running game averaged 2 yards a carry. So it's just, I think it's really going to come down to that. I think the passing defense for Tennessee has been good, but maybe a little overrated. But just based on what we've seen from Patriots receivers, I still think that's a strength. I think that's an edge for Tennessee is maybe the way to put it. So I think a lot is going to be put on the run game, and I'm just not exactly sure how it's going to stack up.
Yeah, I think our producer Ethan put together some pretty solid numbers. You say maybe not what we thought they are. I'll be stronger. Fraudulent. I didn't know, but looking at these numbers, league best 151 yards per game allowed by the Titans passing defense. 5.2 yards per pass allowed, 11 touchdowns, which is 13th in the NFL. You would think this is a good, if not really good, passing defense. But let's look at who they've faced. Week 1, Bears passing offense that just hadn't put anything together. Rookie quarterback, a bunch of new receivers. They were still figuring it out. Then the Jets, who stink. The Dolphins didn't have Tua. Josh Allen killed them 2 weeks ago. 323 passing yards. He was Josh Allen. Kicked their ass. Last week, Jared Goff only had 85 yards. Only needed that because Detroit is just running the ball down everybody's throat and really had their way with Tennessee. So you look at the numbers, and they're not bad. I think there's an opportunity, and maybe not with the Patriots, but there's an opportunity for somebody to kill this team. So maybe not this week. But moving forward, that's something I think those numbers are going to spike. They're going to be up over 200 in no time in terms of yards allowed per game. If not next week, the week after. That this passing defense is bad. So the Patriots might be able to take a little bit of advantage with that. If Drake May plays, that's another thing that we'll get into, but who knows if he's going to be playing. If he does, I would love to see them throw out, give him a couple opportunities to go deep. Kayshon Boutte, if you want Javon Baker to play, maybe throw one to him and see what he can do. Get after this pass defense because I think there's more opportunity there than there is against the rush defense. One thing I wanted to get your thoughts on, Sean. You were on the Calvin Ridley beat all offseason. You wanted him in New England. I think Sean wrote 487 stories about Calvin Ridley from like March to September. Yep. How do you see them defending him? Do you think they can? And how big of a part of this passing offense is he? Because he's kind of the whole thing, right?
Yeah, I would agree. And he's been pretty quiet, really, up until last week. And it was almost funny, you gave him so many targets and everything like that. And it was actually kind of after he called out the team for not targeting him early in the games. And then
it's always a good thing.
And then, they gave him a ton of targets just last week, got him involved really early. But it was almost, to me, I was almost looking at it, I'm like, is this their way of trying to up Calvin Ridley's trade stock? Like, are they trying to do this right before the deadline and, and maybe move on from him? But he is a whole passing offense. I would say I think the Patriots can cover him. I mean, they've done a really good job. Christian Gonzalez, obviously, the premier corner on their team, and he's done a really good job against a lot of the top receivers in the league. So I think if there's like one, I think the most glaring edge that the Patriots have is their pass defense against Tennessee's passing offense, and a lot of that is Gonzalez, Marcus Jones, Jonathan Jones. It's good, and the only passing offense that is worse than Tennessee is the Patriots. So if there's anything good to be said about, if there's anything good to be said, that might be one thing, and so. We'll kind of see how they're able to exploit that. If they're able to get after the passer and the passer that Tennessee has, it's a little uncertain at this point. But regardless who is there, whether it's Will Levis or Mason Rudolph, I wouldn't call either of them It's not a spooky situation. We'll go with that today. So
Halloween,
I would. That's right. So I think the Patriots, when it comes to defending the pass like that, I think they're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, that's another huge thing that I have in the back of my mind. Neither team really knows who the other team's quarterback is going to be on Sunday. Drake May, in concussion protocol still. He's progressing well. As of Thursday, limited participant in practice, which is phase 3/4 of the 5-step program. So we'll see. That we have a long way to go till Sunday. I don't think we will know until it'll be a true game time decision. And then in Tennessee, with these two quarterbacks, it kind of doesn't matter. Like, they both stink. Will Levis, 1-4, started the first few games, 58.9% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks.
Gross.
He's been producing some all-time memes, though, like all-pro first-team memer, Will Levis. And then Mason Rudolph, since he's come in, 66.4% completion percentage, so he's a little bit better. 5 touchdowns, 7 picks. What are we doing? Like, I actually flipped those. Let me flip the numbers. 7 picks for Levis, but 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions for Rudolph. Again, not good. Okay. And I think these numbers and these two quarterbacks produced an all-time quote from Gerard Mayo on Wednesday. I'm going to read it out because I think it's hilarious. A little bit of uncertainty at the quarterback spot, which is always difficult to prepare for teams that have that uncertainty at the quarterback spot. They have 2 different skill sets, and saying that, they've both won games in this league. That's it. Then he talked about every other aspect of the team. He's kind of drawn a little bit from the Bill Belichick way of thinking. Bill used to say on Wednesdays and Fridays when he would talk about the other team, he can make all the throws. And that's how you knew he did not respect the other quarterback. He can make all the throws. He's not going to, but theoretically he can. I think this was Gerard Mayo's way of saying, yeah, these guys can make all the throws. They've won games in this league. Yeah, so is every other quarterback who's ever started more than 5 games in the NFL. Just had nothing for him. He was, talking all about Jeffrey Simmons and the 2-headed monster running back game. He was really impressed by the running backs. T'Vondre Sweat, just everybody on the roster, he had nice things to say. The quarterbacks, they've won games. So I don't think they respect either one of these guys at all. I don't think they care who they're playing against. And I would expect, I've been saying it for weeks, months really, because we're that far into the season. One of the Patriots going to get aggressive. Let DeMarcus Covington get after these quarterbacks. Yeah. Last week they kind of did. They were pretty early in the game against New York, very calculated in their rush. They didn't want to let Rodgers scramble. And then after the game, we found out halfway through the second quarter, they were like, this guy can't run. Let's just get after him. Mm-hmm. And that really slowed down New York's offense. I think this week they're just going to go for it. Levis is an athlete, so if he does play, you got to be a little bit careful about that. But if you get pressure on him, he's going to make a mistake. If you get pressure on Mason Rudolph, he's going to make a mistake. This guy's a career backup. He's not good enough to start games on a regular basis. So it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. I would love to see the Patriots get after these two guys and win the game that way. We've seen them win the game running the hell out of the ball in Cincinnati. And then they kind of just found a way to win last week. They were less disastrous than the Jets. I want to see them win a game defensively, which is what we thought that was going to be their calling card coming into the season. Get after these two guys and make some plays and really dominate the game. I think there's an opportunity this week, if not for the rest of the season, for the Patriots to dominate a football game.
Yeah, and just to go back to your point, Will Levis is 4-10, so he technically has won 4 games.
Right.
He's also lost 10 of them.
He's won games?
In a rather small sample size, double-digit wins. But yeah, I agree, and I think again, it's one of those things. It all starts up front for the Patriots. If they can stop the run, it was better against the Jets than it had been in recent weeks. They didn't give up 180, 190, whatever they were giving up. I think it was 111 or something last week, but so they weren't gashed as much, but they still gave up 4 yards a carry. So it's not like it was a stellar performance either. And we'll see how they're able to kind of corral, I guess maybe is the word, Tony Pollard and the running game. And if they can do that, and if they can get Tennessee in, those sorts of, third and medium, third and long situations, then you give yourself the chance to get after, 2 quarterbacks who wouldn't be good if you get after them.
All right. Before we get out of here, give me your pick, Sean. I want a score prediction as well. What do we got?
I'm going So a lot of this, I think a decent amount hedges on Drake May playing or not.
Right.
I think if Drake May plays, I think they win. Let's call it by 10. Okay. I think if Jacoby Brissett plays, I think they win by 6. So let's call it a 23-17.
I got 23-9 Patriots. I think they're going to kill them. The Titans kind of stink. I have zero respect for these two quarterbacks. Gerard Mayo has zero respect for these two quarterbacks. So it's an opportunity. We won't get too many more for the rest of this season, but the Patriots should win this football game. Sean and I both have W's in the win column. 3-6, not terrible. Well on their way to surpassing last year's win total. So for all the people who were freaking out about Gerard Mayo, relax. It's been 2 months. So that's what we got. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, review, wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube, Spotify. What else are we on, Sean?
Twitch. I think it's
everything. We're on everything.
Wherever you can get your podcasts.
Wherever you can get your podcasts, rate, review, subscribe, like, do all of it. We'll see you next time.